One of the things you'll notice if you're working with effects like this, where you're creating a picture-in-picture, is that you've got scale for your clips, and you've got position, and you've got rotation. There you go. You can spin around the anchor point, but you don't have any 3D. And in fact, it's very easy to add 3D, and it seems a strange omission to me not to have X, Y, and Z controls under the motion settings here. I guess it's just the way the system's designed. If I go to the effects list here, I can just type in 3D in the quick search box, and down here I've got a basic 3D effect. If I drag and drop this basic 3D effect onto my clip, and I'll just collapse motion for a second here, I've got some standard 3D controls. And I must admit, so many different applications use so many different words to describe things that I've gotten into the habit now of just clicking on everything and seeing what it does. And certainly for me, things like swivel and tilt, I'm not quite sure. So let's have a look. Swivel, there we go. That's going to rotate on the y-axis, which means tilt, there we are, that's rotating on the x-axis. Now this is a pretty standard effect. It behaves like any other kind of effect, but it's not listed as a so-called fixed effect in the way that motion opacity and time remapping are. There's even a kind of fake 3D distance control here. You'll notice that all of these options are keyframeable. I've got stopwatches for them. I can expand them to get a different kind of control. There we are. And I've got a specular highlight option, which adds a glow to the image. If I just tilt this a bit, you can see what that does. In certain ways that looks fantastic. In certain ways it can look a little bit unnatural. And you'll notice that you don't have any control at all over where that image is. It's designed to look as if there were a light bulb above the image shining down onto it. If we were working inside of After Effects, we'd be able to move things around in 3D space and create virtual lights and have a virtual camera fly through. And while we're at it, we can make a virtual spaceship to fly through the environment as well. But in Premiere Pro, it's pretty simple. It's pretty basic. Another thing you'll notice that doesn't seem to make any difference initially at all is this preview wireframe option. I'm just going to resize so you can read that. Draw preview wireframe. If I turn this on, it doesn't really change anything. And the reason it's not changing anything is because it doesn't need to. But take a look at this. If I go up to my motion controls, straight away now my image has disappeared. And all I've got is a wireframe outline of the image. The reason this preview option is here is so that you can work with the relatively CPU intensive, that means the relatively hard work effect of calculating 3D quickly. And I can now, for example, go in and make a change to the location of my media. And if I'm happy with it, based on the location of this so-called wireframe, I can now click away and I get the result. Notice that the result is this 3D perspective, but if I select the clip again and go back to selecting motion, let's just get my position controls here. Yep. You'll notice that, oh, that's of course the wrong layer. Let's do this with the correct layer. You'll notice that I've got a thin line that shows the result of the 3D effect and a more dense line that represents the original position of the clip. If I scroll down to the bottom here and turn off this Effects Enable button so the 3D is no longer applied, you can see that's where the clip would be, but then when combined with the basic 3D effect, it gets shifted over here. In fact, let's turn off that preview and we can see the results of the two. So I think when you first start looking at these controls, it can look a bit busy. There's a lot of different things going on and a lot of controls that are directly inside the picture. But if you work down on the list, top to bottom, you can see what's going on with your effects. So that's just an introduction to using basic 3D to give you, in this case, so-called swivel and tilt controls, which I would call rotation on the y-axis and rotation on the x-axis in Premiere Pro CS6.